Hello. Um, this is this is just going to be me rambling about the video game I'm in right now, and maybe a couple of other things, but mostly this game, which is Dying Light: The Beast. The third game in the Dying Light series, which I'm very fond of. And because it's a ramble, I'm not sure where to start. I guess I guess we can start with my thoughts on the first game, which is that it is probably a perfect zombie game. Um, Zombies in a lot of games are afterthoughts. They're usually just like a horde you shoot at. But I feel like in the Dying Light series, the zombies, the virus, have always been pretty much at the forefront, and they've always been interesting. A lot of games just have like walking corpses, and there's really nothing else going on, which is fine for certain games. But I think a lot of the designs and the evolution that the Dying Light series brought to the zombie genre is cool. Given it's not the first game to have like variants, I can think of a couple. Um, Dead Rising 2 had variant zombies that would that were sort of evolved and buffed up versions of the regular zombies. Left 4 Dead and its sequel has all of their variants, witches and tanks and the whatnot. And from what I understand, I've never played Left 4 Dead or its sequel, but from what I understand, there is like a horror element to certain uh, zombie types. A lot of it has to do with sound cues and their presence in um, certain areas and certain fights. Um, but yeah, Dying Light obviously has a lot of variants. Not a lot, but a few notable ones. Mostly in the first game, it was just regular zombies, virals, volatiles. I believe at the time they were called, there were taller zombies that had a piece of rebar with a rock or bit of concrete attached to it, and I believe they were called goons, if I remember correctly. Um, yeah, regular zombies, virals, goons, demolishers, which are massive zombies, mostly mostly muscle and protruding bone, usually covered in SWAT or riot gear. And then they had the volatiles, which is, I think it's probably the scariest version of of a zombie. that you can get without it being like so far removed from the undead aspect, because they're so close to being just straight up monsters, like an indescribable sort, but they are still zombies, just just beefier and way more terrifying. And they almost have a sort of vampire-esque quality to them, because they only come out at night. They don't like being in the sun, and they don't like UV light. Um, Kind of an I Am Legend uh, deal going for them. But even if they might be inspired by other um, zombie types in other forms of media, they're so wildly unique that they're their own thing. For example, the I Am Legend zombies, they all look the same. I didn't mean to pause. I wonder why I did that. Um, all of the I Am Legend zombies sort of look the same. They're all bald, very pale, and they look a little goofy for the at the time, because I believe they were mostly CGI, which is fine. It's a good movie, but they don't really have that grotesque quality that you expect in a lot of zombie uh, types, you know. But the volatile is so horrifying. It's almost it's almost like they themselves are scary, but it's almost scary how they evolve. There's been a couple dozen of videos about the process, but the way that I understand it is that a regular zombie, or maybe even a viral, has to just sit in a dark area for a long enough period with no exposure to sunlight or UV light for a prolonged period of time, to the point that they evolve into volatiles. Um, the way that the virus evolves is a pretty big part of the uh, the first game's DLC. The name escapes me at the moment. Dying Light the Following, the way the virus evolves, and slightly less in the second game. But in this game, it's sort of back. How the virus evolves, how it affects um, people, how it affects people that don't turn into virals or volatiles. I won't be giving any spoilers for this game, but it is interesting how the second game just kind of didn't really focus on the evolution aspect. It was mostly just like the the subtitle for the second game, Dying Light 2, Stay Human, is sort of all about, you know, staying human. you are infected in the second game, and your whole goal is to, you know, not succumb to the virus. But in this game, it's kind of like the opposite. Hence the subtitle, Dying Light, the Beast. You sort of control the virus in this game in a couple of different ways, which is pretty interesting. I'll keep saying the word interesting, even if, like, there's more nuance to it. I'm just not, I'm just not smart enough or no talk word good to be able to describe what I really mean most of the time. This game is also very pretty, by the way, despite it being dead. It's very green, unlike other apocalyptic type games, where everything is either like gray or green for a different reason. It's it only seems slightly overgrown, which is nice. It's very pretty. It just looks like regular. It just looks like a regular place. It doesn't look like it's the end of the world unless you get in like really, really close and you see the abandoned cars and buildings and the walking corpses. I didn't mean to punch. I apologize. Are my fists just going to stay up? That's fine, I guess. Yeah, I'll look around a little bit. Like over here, you almost can't really tell. Like there's a little bit of overgrowth, and you can sort of see a few zombies here and there, but from a distance, it almost looks like the world hasn't ended yet. And it's moments like these are pretty peaceful. And there's a couple of places in all the games that sort of give off this this vibe, this immense scale. Usually on a really tall building or structure. You can see there's a monument in the distance. That is, I think that's the peak. But maybe not on a technicality, because it might be possible to get up to places like there. And there's a lot of different elevation in this game. So like that clock tower on a technicality might be taller than that monument. Let's take a look with our handy dandy binoculars. It might be taller than the monument. But anyway. I really like zombie games, if you couldn't tell. My experience with this game has been probably perfect. like I haven't really run into any like major game-breaking bugs. There was one, but that's probably my fault for playing it too long. The water began to glow like insanely brightly, but that was really early on. Um, I almost kind of like it when games have little visual bugs like that. That like when you play it for a really long time, it sort of shows that that maybe you shouldn't. Um, Another example of this is totally off topic, but in Spider-Man 2, if you played the game for like 8, 10 hours plus, Spider-Man would turn into a cube, and people would be posting like, why did my Spider-Man turn into a cube? And it's like they basically called themselves out. Like you played the game for 10 hours, you psycho. You shouldn't do that. It's not healthy for you. It's not good for your eyes. It's probably not good for your hands either. But I digress. I'm supposed to just kind of stay on topic. Where's the sun? There it is. It's making its way to where it needs to be. You know what I would like for a sort of DLC or expansion of this game? I'd like to go up into the mountains, or at least a more snowy area. It's one of the it's an environment we haven't explored yet. Not environment, just I guess a biome, weather. I'm not sure. I think snow would look really nice, and being able to run through it would be cool. No pun intended. I've beaten the game, obviously, because I have legend points, which is apparently something they added recently. Which is like perfect because I just started playing. It would have been slightly it would have been slightly disappointing if I had reached the max level and there wasn't legend levels. Huh? Where's the sun at now? Sorry. This game is very peaceful at times. My original plan was to just ramble until it reached sunset, but I think I'm slowly running out of steam. There's definitely more I could talk about in terms of zombies and other games, and even this game, but I don't really want to spoil too much. There's a lot of interesting things to be found in this game, and I certainly haven't found them all. But, you know, I'm sure if you were really curious, you could just look up everything. I've only I've only done a few things. I've only looked up a few things, mostly where all the outfits are, because at the time, I didn't realize that all the clothing was shown on the map. Because I am a fool. And, I don't know, sometimes when you play a game for a while, you sort of get tunnel vision, where you lose out on a lot of the more obvious things. Anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble. I hope you enjoyed it to a degree. And, I don't know. Tell me, what is your favorite zombie? I personally don't know if I have one. Actually, there is one zombie type that I find fascinating in a moral sense, because zombies for the most part are the perfect enemy, because you sort of don't have to feel bad. They're dead. They don't have wants, hopes, or dreams. They just kind of want to kill you. But for the most part, most zombies were human at one point. And so there is some moral dilemma in some forms of media, where it's usually like, they were a person at one point. They could have been your neighbor. They could have been your friend. Maybe there's a way to cure them, etc., etc. But there is one zombie type where that dilemma doesn't exist, and that is the Nazi zombie, popularized by video games like Call of Duty Black Ops. Call of Duty World at War, and I think the games are called Zombie War or Undead War, something like that. It's the same game as the Sniper Elites, but it's just with zombies, but it's just with Nazi zombies. And the reason why there's no moral dilemma for Nazi zombies is because they were Nazis when they were alive, and now they're just undead. There's no feeling bad for them. And those aren't my favorite zombies, but those are very fascinating, because they're the perfect villain. There's no but he could have, when you shoot them and their head pops like a melon, you're not like, oh, but he was, Anyway, sorry about that little extra rant. I hope you enjoy. Good night.